So, I mean, something that like really struck me, dude. Can we talk about your cardiac arrest?
Yeah, yeah, I'll talk about anything you
Um,
want. Yeah.
dude, because like I see you here on camera. You look healthy. You look full of life. You know,
Yeah.
you're clearly a samurai. You've got this Japanese writing and everything in the
Yeah.
background, right? Like, where the hell does cardiac arrest come from?
I still don't know. I don't even know if I could answer that.
Still
It was
don't
random.
know.
It was absolutely random. I still don't know. Yeah, still don't know.
Unreal. Um, can I ask if you've maybe
Yeah.
lost weight since
Anything.
then? Like, what was your physical condition at the time? Were you fit? Were you healthy? Like, you look fit and healthy now, but I don't know, body's changed. Like, that's
Well, on the side,
insane.
I was a personal trainer for years, and I've been in fitness my whole life. No family history, non-smoker. I worked out that day and had a fantastic workout. Felt great. Um, no, I didn't take anything except maybe a little multivitamin or, um, protein drinks. Nothing
Sure.
crazy. It was a purely random thing, and never in my wildest dreams did I think that would happen. Never, never.
Can you
Changed my
explain to
life.
me the I'm sure. Oh, I'm freaking sure. Can you explain to me the difference between like an actual like a heart attack versus cardiac arrest?
Yeah, cardiac arrest is when the heart it's no longer beating. It's just done. A heart attack, and people a lot of times get them confused, but a heart attack is more of a blockage. So there's something that kind of impedes the flow of blood there. But the cardiac arrest, there's not necessarily a blockage. It just the heart stopped beating.
So your heart just straight up
Straight up twice,
just
2 days, 1 day apart, 1 day. So it happened one day, and then the next day.
so the second time I imagine you're in the hospital?
Yeah, I was in the hospital. Yeah,
Okay, you
yeah.
were in
The
the
second
hospital when it
time,
happened.
yeah, good place to be. And
Sure.
I was,
Sure.
it did happen, and it was just utterly, utterly terrifying. And I knew seconds before it happened. The first time, I knew something was going to happen, and I turned to the lady next to me, and the only reason I'm alive is because I was not alone. And so
Sure.
I got CPR, and I turned to the lady next to me, and I just said, I'm going to go down now, because I knew I'd say 5 seconds prior, and I could see my vision closing in, so I knew I was going to lose consciousness. Like it was like a tunnel, the darkness was sort of closing in, and you get that clammy, lightheaded feeling, and you're about to lose consciousness, which I never had before. I'd never passed out before, but I knew it. Of course, I didn't know I was going to have a cardiac arrest, and when I woke up, I was in an ER, and it was like straight out of a movie. Like the doctor was yelling at a nurse, and they were
But
like
you're like
arguing, and it was
fuzzy and
frantic.
hazy, like you can't really
I'm like, "What?"
understand whether
Yeah, they are freaking out, and I remember the doctor yelling at the nurse, and he was just like, "What did you do to this man?" And I mumbled. I was like, "Nothing." I was like, "Nothing." She didn't do any. Like he thought maybe they gave me something that made me, but no, no. And he asked me like, did I take steroids or anything? Because I was such into fitness, and never tried it, never.
where were you when the first cardiac arrest happened?
I was actually on the way to the ER only because my girlfriend at the time was a nurse, and
Okay.
we're not together anymore. But
But you were
uh,
already on your way to the ER?
yeah, only because and there was no previous signs. I just felt like my heartbeat might be just a little like it was a little irregular. And normally I'm a duct tape it and forget it kind of guy,
Sure. Sure.
And I felt fine. Like I could have bench pressed that night and felt just fine. And and I
Love
did
it.
hours earlier. I was at the gym, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to go to sleep. And she was like, you know what, maybe you should just play it safe. And I went to the ER, and that's where it happened, like right before. So the only reason I'm around is because A, I wasn't alone, and B, I was. in route there, almost like, so it wasn't like I was driving alone. That would have been terrible.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, no, and ever since, I actually have a condition now where, and I've seen world renowned doctors, is I have this condition where I'm dizzy like 24/7, and I've never received an answer, and I'm telling you, I've seen specialists that people on a waiting list for a year to see, and I waited for a year to see this like dizziness specialist. And the closest thing I can think of from everything I've gathered over the years, and eventually I just kind of gave up on, uh, finding what caused it. But I have electrical problems, is what they think. But a freak thing, again, no family history, nothing like that. I do have a pacemaker now, just as like a safety net. It's just a safety net. Because after that second one, I was starting to say
Yeah.
my goodbyes,
Sure.
and it's time to get a pacemaker. So, you know,
Unreal.
terrifying.
So like
And I was
you're
30. I was
so
30.
you're feeling dizzy right now.
Yep. It's not so bad right this second, but I do feel it. It's like waves. But the thing is I have to manage my own energy, and I have to have really hardcore boundaries. Professionally, I've had to turn things down. I have to get a certain amount of sleep. Um, and I do have PTSD,
Yeah.
where
Who
I have these
freaking
attacks,
wouldn't? Yeah.
because I always think I'm about to keel over. And so many times since then, and this is about 10 years plus now, over 10 years actually. Yeah, over 10 years. And I just feel like, so many times since then, I felt like I was going to keel over because my blood pressure would tank. I've been carted out of work on stretchers and paramedics there and the whole bit, and never could figure it out. So the only thing that really helps is if I get and it doesn't take care of it, but it does make me feel better, is I get a crazy amount of sleep.
Mm.
Right now I get about 8 hours, but for a long time I was like, if I just sleep, I will feel like slightly better. But I've been a coach for many years, and helping people change their behaviors. And one thing I help people on is boundaries. And I have to manage my boundaries, and it's rubbed some people the wrong way because I don't always look sick. Um, when you don't look sick, it's hard to. Some people think I'm. I almost passed out in parking lots before. I mean, it's been an absolutely just terrifying experience.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just terrifying. Um, the second time I had some IVs, and I felt like, it was closing in again. And I almost ripped them out of my arm because my arm was just killing me. There was putting something in me that didn't agree with me. And I wake up, and these people were surrounding my bed, and this nurse was like stroking my forehead and just saying, you're all right, you're okay, you're okay. But some people ask me if I saw a white light, so I'll go into that. No, I didn't. Sometimes I felt really hot though, and it did smell like sulfur a little bit. So that's no, I'm just kidding. I like to give that answer usually when people
Sure.
ask.
Sure. And
It was a little hot actually. It was really hot.
so I mean that's actually like a thought I had like as you were describing the darkness coming in, that thought actually did come to mind. Like maybe that's what people are seeing. Because if I put my hands together and you know, of course, like
Well, that's what it was.
anything in that middle is gonna look bright, but that may be the light. It's just the inverse.
Yeah,
It's just the darkness closing in, and you're just hanging on to kind of
yeah.
that last bit of vision.
I think what was most terrifying is the feeling of loss of control, because I knew that I was going to lose consciousness, and then for what, especially in the days and months and years after that, I never knew if, like, is this the end? Like, if I feel something weird going on in my chest, which happens every day, I feel it kicking in every day. Um, and I have a Bluetooth device that syncs to it and downloads the info every single day. It's
To
10 feet
your
from me right
to your
now.
pacemaker?
Exactly, yeah, it's Bluetooth, and it checks me every
Unreal.
day and then sends it to the doctor. Yeah, it's crazy. But, it's just the terror, and I remember being in an airport once, and I had an episode, and I felt like, I was alone, and I felt like I needed to just go somewhere and just lay down, and, I passed out in a gym locker room once, and I asked, the gentleman there, I was like, "Can you just stay with me?" I mean, it sounds like I felt like a little kid in that moment, just like scared, just scared because I always felt like I felt fragile, and I was always the guy. I was a collegiate athlete, vegetarian for several years. I mean, did all those right things, um, and so yeah, it's definitely a shock. Transformed my coaching sessions.
Sure.
Totally transformed those. Yeah,
Dude, I just
but
like, it puts things into perspective for me, I think. Just like as I'm hearing this, like I think for a long time I claimed to be a perfectionist. And I'm sure you know what that actually means. It actually means I'm just
I do.
scared of failing, and as I've dug into that and tried to understand where it comes from and pull it apart, it's like I'm scared of putting out a kind of shitty podcast. Like that's it. And I just like that feeling of, oh shit, here it is.
Nah, I'm not worried about that for you. You
Yeah.
have such a good energy about you.
No, I appreciate
I've done a ton of podcasts.
well, I
I've
appreciate
done a ton, and I think it really is about just enjoying the chat and being
Sure.
authentic.
Yeah.
That's it. The ones that are really rigid and that's a different experience. But
Yeah.
I can relate. I mean, I grew up and I'm very introverted, and my clients probably be surprised to hear that, but I'm very very introverted. Like almost like off the charts on all the measurements.
So just to make
Um,
sure we're like using the same definition, I'm I think we're probably going to be kindred spirits here. Like, are you referring to introvert as in disliking social interactions, or introverted as in needing solitude to recharge?
I would say more of the needing solitude to
Okay.
recharge. I enjoy good social interactions, but
Yeah.
I need boundaries that are I need to give myself what I need, and what may energize some people utterly exhausts me. And introversion too. Growing up, I had a ton of, I'm talking soul crushing anxiety. I mean, I was nervous, just anxious. Public speaking, don't even go there. Um, and I had fairly low self esteem. I felt like I had to be a people pleaser to really fit in, and certainly the PTSD did not help the anxiety which I already had. But I was able, and you mentioned something in the beginning which resonated with me too, and that's that um, I gravitated towards coaching and this stuff because I was seeking it for me. I wanted to overcome those things, and then I found out. I think, and I would put you in this category too. I think that the people who are seekers, they resonate and they connect with people better because they can relate. They can relate to those people. And I think that, um, I mean, I've been able to relate to clients, and I've coached thousands over the years. Um, and yeah, you can connect with people, you can relate. But I think for me, once I owned it and I stopped thinking of all that stuff as something to be fixed, took care of it. I can speak in front of 400, 1,000 people right now, and I'm fine. But it was really once I owned it and said, "You know what? Me failing doesn't make you a failure, and I have failed many times." Um, I stopped trying to get it perfect because I think if you are confident in the imperfection, if you own it, then you know people can tell, they can sniff out in if you're not authentic, and they can tell if it's stuffy and you're trying to be something. But if you just are authentic, I think it's a much more relaxed vibe, and what you were worried about, it goes away anyway. So that was the case for me. That was the case for me because for years I felt like, well, if I'm introverted, I can't be like that because there's something wrong with me. I have to earn my self-worth. Um, and yeah, once I just stopped trying to fix it and started loving it about myself, I just didn't worry about it so much.
Yeah. Um, I really have to thank my wife really for like being able to connect with people. I really think I started to really learn how to empathize when I actually like really opened up, kind of like exactly what you're saying. I don't know if love those parts of me is maybe the word I'd use, but it's probably just semantics at this point. I think marriage will probably tend to do this to a lot of people. I think, as men, I think we all universally recognize that women, in order to feel connected to us, their spouses, their husband, their significant others, like they need us to be open with them. And that was really tough for me for a long time because I wasn't really even open to myself about myself. So it's like how can you share yourself with someone else when you can't even acknowledge who you are? And I really got into kind of the some of Jordan Peterson's work, and he talks about
Mhm.
like a lot about Carl Jung. I got into Carl Jung's work, and it was really his work that really opened me up to acknowledging almost the darkness within me, the you know just everything that I didn't think was good about me, like was just something to incorporate into my life. Carl Jung's really big into like embracing the monster that you are, but using that chaos, that chaotic energy, and kind of funneling it into something good. So I mean, I really have to thank my wife for that one. Like as I've gone down this journey of, hey, like I'm a pretty good person, but there's also I can acknowledge now, like, and this is going to sound really dark, but I think people should really think about this. Like, if I take myself back to 1940s Germany, do I fall in line as one of the German police? Well, there's probably some part of me that would. Those were in fact ordinary men. So I feel like, for at least for me, acknowledging that, like, I have darkness and I have problems, and just seeing them for what they were now allows me to empathize, I feel like, so much with other people. And again, like people who haven't thought about this will hear that and be like, who the what the fuck is wrong with this guy? But there's a specific book called Ordinary Men that follows a German police battalion, and it kind of follows their story of like in the 1920s, 30s, like they were just regular policemen who at one point committed the genocide and the homicide of the Holocaust in Poland. So it's just interesting thing as I've learned to embrace and see my darkness. I, for whatever reason, care so much more about other people and care so much more about the darkness that other people are confronting. And it's made me so empathetic in a way that I would have never understood had I not gone through it. It's this really weird
Mhm.
kind of dichotomy that, you know, you obviously don't act on the darkness, but what you have this common expression, what you resist persists, but what you embrace erase. So I think as I've embraced the darkness, it's become a force for good, and it's just allowed me to connect with other people. I know that's a really long explanation, but that's just kind of part of the journey that I've been on to like understand that, hey, like I'm talking to, it sound weird again, like another animal, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, and I think this is what you're saying too. Is I think people are capable of all sorts of things normally thought uncharacteristic of them,
Yeah.
given just the right circumstance. So, and I think we often, as a society, judge each other for situations that we've never been in. So I can think back in my history about situations I've been in that I previously would have judged someone on about, and then I found myself in the situation and it changed my view of it. Um, many situations like that, and we all think we know ourselves. I don't think I know myself fully, and I think that's what you were saying as
The
well.
more I've tried to discover, the more I
Yeah,
realize how complicated and how deep the rabbit hole goes for sure.
yeah. Well, how could we? I mean, because I don't know how I would be in this circumstance or that circumstance because I've never been in it. And I think if you ask most people, I think most people think they know themselves, or they think I wouldn't do that, or I would do that, or whatever. But again, I think, again, all the situations I've been in that I never would have imagined myself in those situations. And I learned something about myself. And I think the best we can say, and everyone always talks about what's the purpose? My purpose. My purpose is this. My purpose in life is that. My purpose is to help people. I think the actual purpose is the exploration of who we are, not becoming this person or that person or whatever. It is the journey of exploring, who we are. But I definitely agree with you. I think, um, I don't fully understand myself, and I think it's just a continuous, thing.
Is this what is this kind of, I would imagine this is the topic of your book, The Half Known Life.
Um, it is the half known life is actually a quote. That the half known life, that those words are from a quote from Moby Dick, and most people think, oh, it's half known life. It must be about the cardiac arrests and your life is short and that kind of thing. But it's more about how we can't see ourselves. That's really what it's about. And I remember the first time I had a psychologist as a client, I was a little taken aback because I was like, aren't they supposed to have it all figured out?
Yeah.
They're
Right.
psychologists. Like,
Yeah.
like, why are they with me? Why are they working with me? They're psychologists, right? They're supposed to be the gurus. Well, I realized very quickly that it doesn't matter how smart you are. You could be brilliant. I've had executive CEOs, I've had military generals, but no matter how smart you are, we can't always see ourselves. We have these blind spots. And that's what I do as a coach is I sort of help them explore that and who they are and what that means. And that is my book. Is it's really more about the exploration of what that means. We can't see ourselves. What does that look like? And I remember once I had a good buddy of mine who is a marriage and family therapist, really good one. And I ran into him once, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm just getting ready to do a session with a couple, and right after a big fight with the old wife." And I just it cracked me up because I was like, "Wow, we're all just people, I guess. We're all just people. We're all just figuring it out." But I was like, "Oh wow, well, good luck with the session." You know, we're all just people.
Yeah. So, um, so you were with your girlfriend at the time when you had your cardiac arrest. Are you married now?
No, no, that relationship I would say was a overall a toxicity in my life, but you know, a apparently everything happens for a reason, and it just so happened she was a nurse by profession.
Sure.
So had she not encouraged me to go, and that's one good thing I could say is, as toxic as elements of the relationship were,
Probably saved your life to some degree.
if not for her. Yeah, which is weird because there was so much pain associated with the relationship in other ways, but she kinda did save my life. So, um, I will always remember that and take that piece with me. Um, but yeah, it was such an interesting point in my life because, I was back at work 5 days later, and I was connected to all these wires.
Unreal.
Um,
What did you do for work at the
I
time?
I was a coach,
Oh, you
which
were the
was so
coach at the time.
weird.
Okay.
I had
You were
just
already a coach at the
scored,
time. Okay.
yeah, my dream job. I had scored, I was kind of freelance before that, and I was in the wellness field, which makes it all the more ironic. But um, I had just scored what I would call at the time my dream job. I had a contract for coaching, and I had this really good role, and I did not have insurance that had kicked in yet because I was just starting. I was there for like a
Dang.
month, right? And I did purchase a temporary policy, which was very wise. But it was small, didn't cover a lot. I was paying off medical bills for a long time. But I could not afford to take the time off. I didn't have paid time off. So, out of financial necessity, I had to go back to work.
Sure.
And I remember being there and I was connected to these wires, and I had virtual sessions at the time. So my clients could not see me connected to all these things. And I remember during this one session, this lady, she was going on and on about her problems. And I just remember thinking to myself, I would never say this, of course, to her. Um, Lady, I'm just trying to stay conscious here. Like, I'm just trying to stay vertical and above ground. Like, the problem just seems so small. And I realized, and it's a constant reminder with my dizziness every day that, and I may get emotional on you here, but at the end of our lives, and I've worked a lot with people who have been through, different traumas. No one comes to the end of life and says, "Whoa, that life went by way too slow." And we realize after traumas, usually, or never, maybe, we realize how we spent our time. And most people will tell you, if you say, "Hey, what are your priorities in life?" They will give you an answer. "Oh, it's my family. It's my family and my career and this and that." But they don't reflect it in their daily life. They get sort of lost in the noise and the busyness, and they get kind of lost in it. And then when something major happens, they lose a loved one, they get in a car accident, they get a terrible diagnosis, or maybe a cardiac arrest. That's when they really go, "Whoa, how am I living here?" And that's really when they think about all that. That lasts for a few months, or shorter, maybe, or longer. And then after a while, they go back to those old habits. So that's one thing I help people with, is sort of break out of that.
Um, I'm sure there's like I'm thinking of I won't be specific on the category of person that I know, but I know people that like and I'm not immune to this. Like I think noise for whatever reason is a word I really resonate with. Like I definitely get caught up in just the day-to-day nonsense. Um but I feel like to a certain extent I've kind of woken up. And you know what? As I'm talking, I'm realizing this is a terrible question to ask, but what if I have a loved one, someone that I care about that like I don't want to wait to see them get in a car crash to like wake up. Or I mean, and again, it's like how do I wake up myself? How do I catch myself is, this is the better question, right? I shouldn't ask about other people, but um in the day to day, like to your point, like I get caught up just as much as the next person. When in reality, like the best part of my day is probably coming home and my son wants to wrestle for 2 hours. And it's like, all right. Like we're
Mhm.
laughing, we're hooting, we're hollering. I'm tickling his
Love
little
it.
sides, and he's just you know. But again, like I get lost in the noise. Um, how do how do I wake up more often without going into cardiac arrest?
This is the most honest answer I could give you. And I, most of my clients over the years, um, even like the one who's a psychologist told me, she said, you know what? I've read all the books. I've read all the self helps. I've done all that. Why am I still struggling? I realize, there's a lot of bad self help out there, and
Mm,
there's a lot of good self help out there. But what if you have 10 gurus, and I know this is a roundabout way to answer your question here, but if you have 10 gurus, they're going to have 10 different ways that are going to fix you or whatever it is. And it's ways that worked for them. But a lot of that stuff treats the symptom. It doesn't treat the cause, the approach of your life. And so if I help a hoarder, I can give them organization, I can clean their house, I can do all kinds of things, but they're going to hoard again in a week because you didn't treat the root cause. So I think unless people fundamentally make sometimes big scary choices that get them that are usually out of their comfort zone, unless people can see themselves better, and most people cannot. And that's why what prompted me to write the book is they can't see themselves. Unless they can do that, they are not going to put themselves in the right situation to be able to make the change. They could read a self-help book, they could read 10 of them, they could go do this. But unless they really think about getting real and sometimes even being in a scary way, and I'll explain that in a second, but nothing will ever really change. And I can hear people saying now, like, but, because if I make 20 suggestions in coaching, what people are going to do is they're going to give me 20 reasons why it won't work. That's what they do. So that's why my job is to get them to really dig deep and explore those things, because we have worked for our whole lives forming these bad habits, the noise, the chatter, the our whole lives. So I can't give someone something that's a switch that says tomorrow you're good. You're totally good. So to answer your question, I would have to say that, and it can be done. It's not getting it perfect. It is the constantly pulling yourself back into the moment, constantly pulling yourself back. And every day I do this. I have this habit now. It's like a stopgap in my head where it's like, if I catch myself in that mental noise, that mental dialogue, I'm just aware of it. That's it. And then when I do that, I say, there I go again, like worrying. Okay, so I'm worried about this thing. What do I actually know about the situation? Usually it's an assumption. Most people live in worst case scenarios. And, one of my clients, she's worried about in 6 months, this work situation, this work drama, this and this and this and this. And 90% of the time, things that you're worried about do not unfold in the way that you think it will. So most of our worrying is for no reason. I have to think about these things because otherwise I get sick. I have to prioritize where I spend my energy, what's worth it and what's not. So to answer your question, I would say it's having a reminder and getting the practice every day, being aware of and understanding what is going on in your head and understanding what is worth. And I know that sounds like a very general, simple answer, but that is the honest truth, because there is no system. There is no follow these 3 steps. It's got to be you undoing the years of habits that you've created. And you mentioned something about your son, and it struck with me because when you interview people, the top 5 regrets of dying is another book out there. when you interview people, the things that they want to do the most are those little things that you described. The thing that I'll miss the most, I think, is actually riding my bike on a warm summer night near like where my parents live, and there's a little pond near there. And I think those types of things are the things I could do it every day until I'm dead, and it would never be enough, kind of thing. And do I do it every day or every week? No, I don't. And I want to. I need to, right? But it has changed my. This is a little long winded here, but
I
it's
love the
changed my
long-winded. I love
relationship.
it.
I'll stop here after this last thing. It's made me approach my whole life differently when I talk about scary choices. I am not afraid to leave a job if I need to move if I need to make some of those scary choices because it's best for me. And I prioritize that energy. Most people, their circumstance is usually, people think they're victims of circumstance a lot, but usually it's their choices that got them there. You know, your whole life is a series of micro decisions, right? The stressful job, the everything. Well, okay, what are you going to do about that? You know, and for me, if I ever got in a position where, you know, I was not living a life that actually reflected those things, I would fire my job. I would do, you know, I need to do things that would make me say at the end of my life, which for a long time I thought could be any second, I need to do things that allow me to fully explore my life, because that's the purpose here, you know.
Makes me feel like I need to go have an encounter with a bear so that I can have some type of life or death experience, you know? Um, and
Well, I'm glad I could inspire you to do
yes, yes.
that.
I'm just gonna walk into the woods and keep walking. We'll get off this conversation at one point, right? And I will most likely remember this conversation for a bit. Um, but kind of like what you talk about, like, then I'll think about it maybe once a week, and then I'm just not going to think about it. It's just going to exist on the podcast, which is like this thing about perspective. Like, I wish I could just have that perspective to some degree so that I could wake myself the hell up more often. Um, is there any other way to gain that perspective other than making incredibly scary decisions? Or, I feel like it's a common phrase like the smart man learns from others. But do you think this is something that, like, I could even learn from you? That someone else could even learn for you? Like, at what level? It can only go so deep if you haven't experienced it. So, like, as you're working with clients and inevitably, sharing a bit about your story, how deep can it actually go? And how, in your perspective, like, how can I take this and actually, like, learn your lesson as well?
For me, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's a remind I it is easier in the fact that I have a constant reminder of it,
Sure.
because you know things are going on my chest every day that I'm like, what the heck is going on? Um, I constantly monitor myself with some of the chronic medical things I have, and dizziness and things, and that always pulls or often pulls me into it. I think when we are feeling the best, we are most careless with that. We take it most for granted. Um, you know, it's when we're feeling great and we're out and we're oh I can, and we push ourselves maybe harder than we thought. I don't think you need to fight a bear to get there.
I
Um,
may go fight one anyway.
yeah. You don't need a trauma, but I do think it would take, um it's not to say that you couldn't have a perspective without the trauma. I think you could. I think you could. I think anyone could. But I think it would take. You take a look at, and this is a weird comparison here. You take a look at someone who's hit quote what they call rock bottom, who maybe isn't working with an addiction or something. Now they have experienced discomfort, a life destruction, a pain so bad that suddenly that pain suddenly it became worth it. Like any value they thought they were getting from any, even if it's a temporary high or whatever it was, um, the pain is so great that they had to make a choice. um, I don't feel like we have to get to that point, but I think people do gravitate towards familiarity and towards what is automatic for them. And I am empathetic with that because most people are just trying to live their lives. They're just trying to go day to day and just, pick up the kids from school and make dinner and go to work and all that. It's sort of the humdrum of every day. But I think it's going to take a catalyst, not a trauma per se, but a catalyst. And I actually thought this way before my cardiac arrest. It was not my cardiac arrest that were the catalyst. The cardiac arrest just sort of confirmed what I already thought. Some people, I think, oh, the cardiac arrest gave you this. Not really. I actually was already deeply immersed in these sort of things before that, which makes again that's the irony there. But um, I just knew that there was something more for my life. It's like that saying Krishnamurti always, "What's living? Going to office for 50 years?" And it's a short saying, but it always sort of struck with me. What's living? Going to the office for 50 years? And I'm not poo-pooing going to an office, but the point is what is living for me? What does that mean? And I think that's where we have to go. We have to have some sort of catalyst. So I would recommend for the everyday person, and by everyday person, I just mean someone who feels they're maybe stuck in that everyday sort of routine, is step back, take a really hard look at your life, and say, is this aligned with is this aligned with you, who you feel you are, even if you don't know who that is. What choices would you have to make to get there? And I would have something every day that could be that could be a positive habit for you. Something, even if it's 5 minutes of reading an audiobook or a book. For me, I had a couple books that I listened to every day, and it just pulled me back into that headspace. And I started to really listen to the chatter in my head, and I started to form new habits. So I would say that is where I would start, is what would a daily positive habit be that could put me in that space, um, that allowed me every day to become aware of what's in my head. And if I'm happy to recommend it to anyone, recommend resources and so forth. But you've got to start forming habits other than the ones that you've had. And you can't change unless you're aware of it. So you have to have that before you can move on, is some sort of awareness of it. You have to.
And awareness is kind of tricky. um, you,
It is.
you
It is. That's the
you
tricky
mentioned
part.
earlier that like some people just like can't see, and I definitely agree that they can't. But I think there's also like a willingness component to it for sure. Because I think to to open even one eye just a little bit is to see how messed up you may be, how messed up your life may be. And so I think for a lot of people, it is just easier to stay blind. And I think I was definitely like that to an extent. Going back to what Carl Jung, kind of some work of Carl Jung, um, kind of back to like daily things that, you know, bring you some type of fulfillment, wake you up to a certain extent. As I've just kind of sat and thought and tried to unravel myself, and I feel like this has actually especially happened lately. Um, I've I think I discovered that there's rage like deep within me to an extent. Um, and a lot of this actually also happened kind of post, I was raised extremely religious, extremely Christian. Um, and I was also kind of having a bit of a faith crisis. And I had felt like something that I was taught growing up was to suppress um the natural man, suppress everything. And so when I think I started to actually release and acknowledge something I've recognized that for me is really important is actually incorporating some type of struggle, some type of hardness, some tough challenge. Most days it's a cold shower. But I notice that like even when I have too many Oreos, too many whatever, like I overeat, I do something that I know isn't good for me, like the imagery is so strong in my head for me. I see myself like caged, just like trying to tear open the bars. And I'm like screaming, like I'm just shouting. And I think for me, that has spoken to, at least for me, some type of need to have struggle in the day and to take care of myself. And my wife and I kind of talk about this a lot. Like, I think a lot of people have like a default emotion. Like my wife's default emotion very much is sadness. For me, it's like frustration and rage. And so I think something that's helped me to like stay awake are like my cold showers, like my intense workouts. Even following a diet for me is like so tough because food is such a comfort for me. So it's like even not eating a bowl of ice cream like forces me to like be in the moment and almost fight, which I think, you know, I I'm trying to unravel like how healthy this is for me long term. But I think, I'm kind of picking up from you. There's maybe a little bit of tranquility that needs to be taking place. I mean, I'd be totally wrong, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. For me, it's almost like I need to embrace the rage. I need to get in the cold shower, and I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing that I'm trying to unravel. But as you were talking, I was thinking, wow, I think I am maybe doing some of these things to keep me awake. Um, and I can definitely say that as I've tried to intentionally struggle more, I think I have been like more present. I think I get home and instead of just wanting to sit and relax, it's like, no, bud, let's get on the trampoline. We're wrestling for the next, hour and a half, 2 hours until you go to bed. So I feel like there's something, at least for me, that intentional struggle has separated. It's intentional struggle has kept me more awake. Do you see that in your clients at all? And am I making sense? Like,
I think so. What came up for me with what you're describing is the need to overcome, like the overcoming, the sense of overcoming. It sounds like that, and I don't know. This is just
sure.
what I'm what's resonating with. Um, the overcoming, it has a fulfilling. It makes me feel alive. It makes me feel my self-worth, um, because if I didn't have something to overcome, is what I'm hearing. If I didn't have that challenge that I could conquer and sort of be pushed, then who would I be then? It's kind of like what I say, like most people spend their whole lives chasing this vision of themselves. And, I specialize a lot in transitions as well. So it's like I work with a soldier who's been a soldier for 30 years. And now it's like, well, who are they now without
Yeah.
that? I always say, well, you're the same person you were before. It's not about you being a role. You're a person, not a role. And who would you be on a deserted island, right? You wouldn't be. Are you still a lawyer on a deserted island? Are you still a doctor? Are you still a winner of accolades on a deserted
I
island by
love that
yourself?
question.
Not
I
really.
love that. I love
No.
that.
Who are you then? And I think for me, I've thought about that many times. Like, are all those constructs, all those societal, those things, like, who am I really if no one else is around to recognize it? Like, am I a good person? What does that mean? Am I like I said, a lawyer? Am I whatever? Was I valedictorian at a school? No, a deserted island. It's all meaningless. It is just you, and you're just being there. And I feel like most people spend their lives chasing this, what they perceive as this happiness, and the happiness exists after they've overcome all these things that they had to that are in the way of the happiness. Then they get to the happiness and they find out happiness was actually a state of mind. And happiness is contingent on all the stars aligning, all your circumstances in your life aligning just in such a way. But you can't control that. So I don't think happiness and peace are two different things. So I would say that peace is sort of the realization that, number one, I being myself is someone I allow. I don't have to do anything for it. It's just someone I allow. Number two is, who am I really? Who am I? And I I it's we talked about the journey of figuring that out. And I think if I know that and I ask those questions, suddenly I'm a little bit more um, I'm in more peace, and happiness it doesn't matter anymore because it's circumstantial. Um, and I find when I think that along those lines, I don't find the need to chase these and overcome these things because in such a way, um, I think of the word ambition. Like, I don't like that word because people think, well, you're not ambitious. Like, what does that mean? What does ambition mean? It means I want to get these accolades. I want to have a legacy. Another word I don't like legacy. Like, what does all that mean? It's usually about finding self worth externally by things I did and things I earned and titles and resumes and things like that. But again, if you're on a deserted island, none of that stuff makes any damn difference. It really doesn't. And at the end of your life, it won't either. I don't have my credentials on the gravestone. Um, it doesn't make any difference. I always say, like, sometimes I think some guy named Dave from 1751. Now let's assume he was a very prominent doctor, very successful. This sounds a little dark, but does anybody care about Dave right now? No, no one remembers Dave from 1751. So all that matters is your day-to-day experience right now. That when you're playing with your son, that's all that actually matters. And the rest is fluff, it's the noise. And for me, ambition is one thing, and it's another thing to feel like it's a different type of stress. And I think what you're describing, the overcoming and all that, to me, ambition is one thing. The other thing, that the thing that pushes me, it's a different feeling than
Yeah.
ambition. It's,
Yeah,
I
because I'm
think
not taking cold
it's part
showers.
of the exploration of
Yeah,
myself.
and I
Yeah.
think, like, I really do not take cold showers to be like, I'm the longest cold shower taker in the world. And to, like, answer your question, I think if I'm on a deserted island and the ocean's cold, I think I'm still jumping in. I think I'm still trying to do the I'm still trying to do that. I was thinking, it came to mind, I was like, "You know what? I think I'd still do it."
You know what I think it is? I think it is what makes you feel alive, and I think it's you then exploring that
Yeah,
person. Simple as that. And that's different than
yeah.
ambition, you
And I
know?
think yeah, because I think exploration is I think I've only just started over the last year or 2 to really explore that because I finally opened my eyes to it, right? If I think as my level of self-awareness and my level of knowing how complex I really am has increased, it's fog of war, right? Like you can only see so much, like whatever. The fog of war has started to clear. And not that I can see things clearly, but I can see that there's so much terrain to go explore. And things um like my weightlifting, things like the cold showers, um, reading, hell, even the podcasting, I think has been a certain measure of what can I do? And it has been extremely fulfilling to now when I take cold showers, the first 30 seconds are done. My breathing is literally just normal and I can stay in there almost indefinitely. And there's something so fulfilling that's some like when I first started taking showers, like I didn't know if I could ever get there. And now there's definitely a measure of like, I freaking did it. Like, how much can I actually do? It's kind of this, weird thing. So yeah, if I'm alone on an island, I think I'm still taking cold showers. I think I'm
I
still
love
doing it,
it.
right?
I love it.
I'm psycho, but um Ryan, we're bumping up on time, man. Where can people get to know you more? Where can they find your resources? When someone inevitably wants you to be their coach, where can people find you?
They can go to my website, rslindner.com, rslindner.com. They can go to my book's website, halfknownlifebook.com, halfknownlifebook.com. I'm on Amazon too. All my social media links are on those sites.
Okay.
So
We're gonna direct people there, put it in the show notes. Ryan, I can't thank you enough, man. This was fun.